Be honest. Are you thinking about trying CBD? A lot of people are. In this next segment, we'll go over the risks, benefits, and alternatives you need to know to decide if CBD is right for you. And we'll share an interesting story about one woman who took CBD for pain and decided to make distributing CBD the focus of her career. We'll also cover some weird government policies and some interesting science along the way. Join me for the science behind CBD on Best Practice. The chemical cannabidiol, which we mostly know as CBD, was first isolated from the marijuana leaf in 1969. I was 4 years old. As it turns out, the first two ingredients in the marijuana plant are number 1, THC, and number 2, CBD. While there's some CBD in marijuana, as it happens, there's a lot more CBD in a different plant called hemp. And if hemp and marijuana look alike to you, you're not alone. Our federal government agreed. Chemicals derived from hemp products, including CBD, were made illegal in the 1930s simply because of their similarity to marijuana. Similar, as it turns out, but not the same, because unlike THC, CBD is not psychoactive. It took until 2014 for the federal government to recognize the mistake and legalize products made from hemp. That opened the door for CBD. 4 years later, in 2018, CBD made from hemp was taken off the Controlled Substances Act and made legal throughout the United States. And that's when things really got interesting. This is the 5-year search history for the term CBD on Google. By the second half of 2017, you can see a lot of people searching for information about CBD, and that interest increased into the middle of 2018. By then, search volume stayed high right through the end of last year when it literally spiked again. Now, I have no idea what this last spike represents, and frankly, if you do, please drop us a comment. As I said before, interest in CBD is not about getting high. CBD does not do that. It's CBD's sketchy cousin, THC, that makes you feel stoned and want to eat a whole bag of Doritos. But the people interested in CBD were not after that. There are more Google searches for CBD, shown in blue, than there are for THC, shown in red. So what were all those people on Google actually looking for? I met one of them last week. Back in 2017, Kathleen Mitchell needed help. She'd moved back home to Arizona from New York when she tore the labrum in her hip. The labrum is like a gasket lining the pelvic part of your hip, which holds the ball in the socket. The pain from a tear in that labrum is absolutely agonizing. It's in the hip, hits you like a lightning bolt. Most people say they can hardly walk or even breathe during an attack. Here's how Kathleen described that time.
Specifically during that time, for the first time in my life, I had major pain in my hip. I was turning 50 and all of a sudden osteoarthritis, bursitis, tendinitis. I even had a torn labrum and they were saying I needed surgery. I didn't want to do surgery and I happened to have the tools right there. I knew about CBD and I started using it. And to this day, I never needed surgery. And ever since then, whether it was my mom going through cancer or my dad with his back surgery, friends needing it for their kids, whatever it was working. I became a believer.
CBD oil applied to her hip controlled the pain and allowed Kathleen to get better and avoid surgery. The experience caused her to open her own store and literally become a CBD distributor. Since then, she's helped thousands of people find relief from pain anxiety, and get better sleep by using CBD. Listen to her take on it.
I would say they come in looking for one of three things. They're looking for help with pain and inflammation, sleep, and anxiety. A lot of times you can't sleep because you're anxious or you're in pain.
Yeah.
You know, you're in pain, so you become, you know, it's just.
Kathleen's customers are not the only ones looking for an alternative. The horrible ongoing death toll from the opiate epidemic has increased interest in drugs other than opiates for the relief of chronic pain. This is a matter of life and death. The Center for Disease Control records the deaths throughout the United States. Shown in red are overdose deaths by county since 2010. More red is more dead. Watch what happens over the time. There were over 100,000 drug overdose deaths in the United States in 2021. We're on track for even more than that this year. To put this number in perspective, it reminds me of when I was a boy back in the 60s. I recall the pain our whole block felt when one of the boys found out his dad died in Vietnam. The war went on for 20 years. More than 58,000 American soldiers were killed or ended up missing in action. The opiate epidemic we are in right now is equivalent to the deaths of 2 Vietnam wars every single year. Now, these CDC statistics were for overdoses. Not all of those deaths are due to people who became addicted to prescription pain medicine, but most of them were. And many of them were people like Steven Tyler. The lead singer of Aerosmith was recently admitted to rehab after medications for a foot surgery caused him to relapse. Rock stars can afford rehab. For most Americans, addiction means homelessness, stealing to get money to buy the drugs, and family heartbreak. We see these people on our streets every day. We know someone whose family has been turned upside down by addiction. So it's safe to say that we all have a national interest in chemicals other than oxycodone, Vicodin, fentanyl, and Valium for the relief of chronic pain and anxiety. All right, let's get back to you. What you want to know is if the benefits of CBD outweigh the risks for your arthritic joint pain. Spoiler alert, if you're pregnant, a nursing mother, or the patient is a child, CBD is not an option. It's in your no-fly zone. For the rest of us, let's start out with the benefits. So, what's so great about CBD? Look, drugs are chemicals that work in our bodies to overcome disease. Many, if not most drugs, actually began as medicinal plants or after the discovery of receptors on target tissues. So as it turns out, there's a G protein receptor that is specifically activated by CBD. And these receptors are found throughout our bodies. Preclinical studies show that CBD can cause gene expression and reduce inflammation in animal models. In other words, there's very clear and definitive scientific evidence that CBD is an anti-inflammatory. Anti-inflammatory, where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, Aleve and Ibuprofen are anti-inflammatory. They're also pain relievers. So anti-inflammatory drugs are pain relievers. CBD is an anti-inflammatory drug. Therefore, CBD is a pain reliever. Remember when I reviewed that clickbait article about vitamin E? In analyzing it, we went over the pyramid of evidence. I want to return to that concept now because the pyramid is a scientifically valid way to compare various pieces of information. This is actually how doctors stack up studies to form opinions about what to recommend to their patients. And frankly, this is how you should look at new information as well, because the alternative is, frankly, scientific propaganda. Fraudsters select studies that support their narrative, or even worse, they'll use lower forms of evidence while ignoring or not presenting higher ones that don't make their case. Honestly, it's easier than you think to fall into this trap. Confirmation bias makes us agree with things that agree with us and disagree with things or information that disagree with us, and this all goes on unconsciously. Remember the very tip of the evidence pyramid? That's the strongest form of evidence that outweighs all the others, and that is the systematic review. The best review of the clinical evidence on cannabis products was actually done by an author named Whiting. This is the key paper that the American Academy of Family Physicians, as well as the National Academy of Sciences, considered in their evaluation of CBD. What Whiting found was that the clinical evidence for cannabis products like CBD was shoddy. The type and quality of studies necessary to really answer your question about whether CBD is right for you just wasn't there. Since then, a similar report has come out literally every year, and each year the reports reach the exact same conclusion. They don't know. We never will, and here's why. In the United States, compounds like CBD that occur in nature, it comes from the hemp plant, are handled differently by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The FDA requires all drugs to show safety and efficacy before coming to market. The process of getting FDA approval for synthetic drugs is what typically generates the kind of data that makes it into systematic reviews at the top of the pyramid. But supplements like CBD, on the other hand, are presumed safe and not investigated unless something goes wrong. So we just don't have conclusive data about CBD, and we never will. That means the ball goes back into your court. CBD is right for you if the benefits outweigh the risks and there is no better alternative. Well, we just discussed the benefits, and quite frankly, the science is there and the potential benefits are considerable. So what exactly are the risks? Like all drugs, CBD has potential side effects. The Mayo Clinic lists several side effects here. Now, thankfully, none of these things is life-threatening, and you can always stop them by not taking the CBD. Another thing to consider is that CBD can indirectly affect the way your body handles other medications. So if you do decide to try CBD, be sure and let your doctor know at your next scheduled visit. And then, of course, there's all the legal stuff. I said CBD was taken off the controlled substances list in 2018, but is the bottle you're thinking about taking legal in your state? Almost certainly it is. The CBD Awareness Project has a nice listing, state by state, that reviews the laws. If you're concerned, you can go over that here. Okay, the last thing besides risks and benefits then is alternatives. What are the alternatives? We have far better evidence for pain relief with NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and Tylenol than we do for CBD. However, NSAIDs don't do anything for your sleep or anxiety. And NSAIDs have their own issues. When you take them every day, you risk heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, and bleeding ulcers. In their position statement, the National Academy of Family Physicians came out for more research, but stopped short of recommending cannabis products, including CBD. And I actually agree with the Academy that more information really would be nice. But as we discussed, it's not likely to ever be there. At this point, I would go one step further. If you're aware of the side effects and discuss it with your doctor, then CBD is a safe alternative as an adjunct to NSAIDs or a replacement for arthritic pain. Special consideration for CBD is appropriate if you're also having trouble with sleep and/or anxiety. And you really should consider taking CBD if you're taking NSAIDs like Aleve or Ibuprofen every day. Maybe give your body a break. Try something else for a month or two. We should always maximize natural healing before turning to pharmaceutical drugs. I hope you now have all the information you need about CBD to make an informed decision whether or not to even try it. If you decide to try CBD, then there's one last thing, and that's how should you take it? CBD comes in gummies, oil, a tincture that goes under your tongue, and dried flowers that can be smoked. The biggest difference between these various forms is the time it takes to onset. If your issue is joint pain, get the oil and rub it on your painful joint. Increase the dose until you find out how much works for you. If you're not sure about the right formulation and you want someone to guide you, then contact Kathleen by visiting her store if you're here with us in Arizona or on the web. If you'd like a transcript of this show, check the references for yourself. Please enter your email and we'll send one to you. And for those of you interested in natural healing, hey, sign up for our 6-week series on how to use food as medicine and how to avoid inflammation in the first place by following an anti-inflammatory diet. For Best Practice, I'm Dr. Dan Lieberman. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you again soon.